Hi there, this is Carl Irwin, the Con Magician, and again, it's been a while. I haven't been posting much lately, but I'm getting a little bit more time in my hands as I'm coming into summer vacation, and I have some time to think about some things and put a few presentations together. I want to look at and talk with you about something here this evening that I haven't talked about in a while. It's something I've talked about at great length, though, on the channel in the past. Not only that, but I also have sold these concepts on Penguin. It was one of the very first products that I put out. It was called Making the Cut. And the idea is that Making the Cut is built on a system by which you can cut to the aces. I mean, is the assumption, but really could be any cards. And the nice thing about this approach is that, unlike some other presentations that deal with ace cutting routines that purport to seem to be impromptu, this one actually is impromptu. It really genuinely truly is. You can do this from a borrowed shuffle deck in use without any real preparation at all. You certainly can do this impromptu with preparation, meaning that you first acquire the location of cards of interest, and then once the acquisition of those cards has been completed, you can then go on from there to locate them. But really what you're doing is relocating what's already been located. That's kind of the premise there. In this situation, we're not doing that at all. What we're more concerned about is taking a truly unknown environment, a scenario that we really don't have any control over whatsoever, and then inserting ourselves into it to find things genuinely and truly. So I know, like, Ben Earl has out his product Real Ace Cutting. You've seen that before, and I think it was covered also in his book Less is More. And then there was a kind of an additional, I know, video discussion he did particularly on ace cutting. And the premise there that he gives is about the realism, the verisimilitude of the actual action of ace cutting. But in reality, it's not truly impromptu. It just is generating that appearance of kind of an impromptu situation. What we're looking at is truly doing this in an impromptu situation. So the cards could be mixed by somebody else. They can be shuffled by the spectator, kind of in a Scarney's Aces sort of situation. And nonetheless, the cards can be found. They can even potentially be a dead cut from the deck. You can find the cards in that way. Now, this is done in this situation with an impromptu plastic deck. Sometimes this will go faster, sometimes it will go slower, sometimes you have to be more hands-on, sometimes you get very fortunate and lucky. But we really are just finding the cards from an impromptu situation. So if we take the aces, and this is not part of the presentation, a lot of presentations really involve first acquiring them, showing them, inserting them back in, but actually maintaining control, doing some kind of multiple shift or something like that to keep them in a stack somewhere, in a slug maybe at the bottom or at the top, and then merely false cutting to get to them. What we're actually doing is we really are losing the cards in the deck. We don't know where they're at. In fact, I find the best way to do this is to have the cards having been shuffled by someone. You take them into your control, and then you proceed to do this. The setup is rarely ever like it is here to say, let me show you something. I find that this is more off-putting if you just do it. It's just done in the situation. Now, this technique obviously can be used to control and cull out a card of interest for any other purpose as well. But I generally don't ever use it for that. I only do this kind of demonstration for the purpose of cutting aces in an impromptu environment, in a situation where the spectator or spectators know intuitively and through experience that the cards are shuffled, and I take them back and then I find them. So just to demonstrate this, and I know you know that I do some things, weird things with table shuffles, and I have methods for maintaining cards when doing a table shuffle, but this is not that. It's just this is really just a good wash and a cut. So this is just to simulate what I would get. Now, there are some other approaches that you can take to to kind of borrow on some of the things from Ben Earl. Not in the way that he presents them as red herrings, but actually as help. You could spread these out face up and note where they're at and give yourself a leg up on the situation and then follow the procedure in this way. But I find that you generally don't need to do that. And I want to show you a nuanced approach to this that's a little bit different than what I taught on the original download, that I've just found with experience over time is a little bit better and helps to alleviate what I call the zombie apocalypse moment, where nothing is showing up. No matter what you do, you just can't seem to find the aces. I think there is a strategy that I don't talk about on the video and really didn't occur to me. I actually teach something quite the opposite to what I'm going to talk about here that helps to avoid that situation. So cards are truly mixed. Now, what happens here is very simple, and it's obvious from the video, those of you that know me and on the channel and some of the things I like. This is simply a zero shuffle. Why a zero shuffle rather than some other shuffle? I think because the zero shuffle in this instance allows you to glimpse, and that's what we're doing. We're riffle culling. We're glimpsing, riffle glimpsing all of the cards in the deck in a systematic way without losing track of anything. If you do a genuine shuffle or a partial shuffle so that some cards are getting shuffled, what you're doing is you're really resetting the situation of the cards and the organization of the cards. And if the organization gets reset, it means that you can't necessarily eliminate locations down to where the card of interest is at. You're always going to be looking in a new environment every time you shuffle. By using a zero shuffle, you can not only block off above the card of interest, which is part of the reason for doing it this way, but you also systematically eliminate cards that are not of interest and keep them out of the way. Okay, so the way this works, and I think one major element here you have to have is you need to cut the deck in half. And it doesn't have to be exactly in half like for a Pharaoh shuffle. That's not the point, okay? But it needs to be essentially half and half, 50-50. It can be one or two cards off, but you cannot have... sometimes you go to cut them in half really quickly in a shuffle, and you get more of this situation where it's really more like 1/3, 2/3, or 3/5, 2/5 kind of a thing. It's unbalanced and uneven. You really want to be cutting half, and that's going to matter in terms of the process of elimination. And I'll show you why that matters here in a minute with a nuanced handling. So you cut in half, and you want to be fairly accurate with this, top to the right. And then I'm going to shuffle and riffle fairly. Now, what I do is I do my zero shuffle, and I've debated this on this channel before. If you don't like my zero shuffle, get over it. This is the one that I do, and it does seem to work well for this situation. You can do a zero shuffle anyway. The premise of a zero shuffle is that you're appearing to riffle the cards together and shove them together. You can do that as open or as closed as you want. It really doesn't matter so long as it looks believable. Bill Malone forever did a zero shuffle where he's really just covered the cards. He'd riffle and then just, bunch them together, giving full coverage. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that, especially if it's efficient. You don't necessarily have to sell every detailed aspect of the shuffle. If it is believable at the most sufficient level, then it is believable. There's no such thing as being more believable. So off my soapbox on that. So this is my zero. I'm going to riffle. I like to push the right packet ahead so that it gives me kind of an inch and a half jog in the front whenever I go to push together. It helps to just mask what really is going on there without having to give a bunch of other cover. And this also helps in a situation where you only have one cover card. A zero shuffle is not typically supposed to be done with one cover card. You should have a few on the top, but in this case, through our systematic elimination, it's better if we have one because we want to be able to see every card that we can see. I'm going to riffle, and I'm going to glimpse at least half, the top half of the left packet. As I riffle, I'm looking at this index, and I'm looking at the cards go by, and I'm doing it briskly. I'm just looking for that figure, that A, to pop out. And once I see it, I don't necessarily have to zero block over top of that, directly over. I just need to know that I am past it. I could be right over it and know that I'm right over it, and that's good. But I could be a few cards off, and that's still okay because I now have controlled it to a more advantageous location that I can get to in the next riffle. Okay, so I'm going to riffle, watching the top, at least the top half, maybe the top 3/4 to try. You want to see as many cards from here as you can. You don't want to just riffle and see just the top few. You want to see a large chunk. Okay, so I'm riffling and I'm glimpsing the left. So I riffle them together. As soon as I see it, I saw an ace, so I still have a few cards left. I'm going to stop, I'm going to push forward on the top cards of this stack, and I'm going to complete a zero. Now, I like to push forward with this finger to whenever I can think about it, whenever it's automatic, to push down that top card, and then I push forward, deinterlace, and then I push this stack over top of the card where I broke at. And I know this is near the ace. The ace is a couple cards below this, I believe. I'm not exactly at it. But under these top cards. And then I'm going to push them together like this and give a little bit of effort. Square it up, but I'm holding the break with my thumb right at that spot where the right hand chunk goes over the opening in the left hand. Okay. Now I know that the ace is near the top of this break. What I do is I automatically take the bottom section and drop it on top. I cut it to the top. Then I'm going to separate again. I'm going to cut. Again, this needs to be half, very close to half. I'm going to take the top half where I know the ace is at to the left and take the bottom half to the right. And I'm going to do the same thing again, but this time I know that the ace is very close to the top, if not at top. So I'm going to riffle, and now I'm not really glimpsing to find an ace. I'm just glimpsing on those last few cards to know that I have it. Once I see it, I drop. It's the second card from the top. I'm going to zero again right over top of that ace. Now I'm holding the break and I'm at the ace. Now I can choose to reveal it any way I want. I could take it right from here and switch hands and pretend to dead cut, and I can cut the ace out. I could take it right from here and cut the top off, push this forward and take it off. I could also do some other things. If I want to, I could double undercut. So what I do is I take half of the block on the bottom below the break, take that to the top, and then I cut at the break and bring that to the top, and then I show it. Either way, I'm just performing some kind of cutting scenario to get, I could do a false strip and false strip it to the top. Whatever you want to do, I get that break to the top and then reveal the ace. Now I start over. I take the top to the right, bottom to the left. I make sure that this is even, and then I'm going to riffle. And if I see an ace, then I'll zero at it. If I don't, I'm going to zero underneath the top card. In this case, I did not see an ace. So I'm just going to zero in underneath the top card, holding the break. Now here is where we get methodical. This is a break just below the top card. What I'm going to do is I'm going to keep the top section to the left because this includes all the cards that I riffled in from the right that I did not glimpse. Okay, the cards below, I've glimpsed the top half of these, but I've not glimpsed these cards. So I'm going to take the top to the left, take the bottom to the right. I've glimpsed these ones, I've not glimpsed these ones, and I'm going to repeat the procedure. I'm going to glimpse at least the top, and as soon as I see that an A go by, I'm going to zero. So in this case, I'm zeroing over top of what appeared to be an A. So I'm going to zero there. Then I'm going to cut at the break that chunk to the top again, controlling the ace closer to the top. Now I'm going to cut the top off to the left, take another crack at it, and then I'm looking for that A, and then I zero over top of where I see it. In this case, again, it's the second from the top. Now I can cut to it and demonstrate that I have the ace. Now I come back and I start it over again. Now I take the top to the right, bottom to the left, and then I zero into it. If I see an ace, I do it. If I don't, I just zero over top of the underneath the top card, which is the case here. I did not see it. Now I take the top cards, which have not been glimpsed, to the left. The bottom cards have been glimpsed. I repeat. I'm looking for that A. I don't see one. Now what I've done is I've glimpsed both sides and I've not seen an ace. So I'm stuck in this situation where I have the topmost cards of this section, top section, have been glimpsed, and the topmost cards of the bottom section have been glimpsed. What I'm going to do is different from what I taught on the original download. On the original download, I took a small packet from the top, cut it to the table, and then replace the rest of the cards to cycle the cards deeper into the deck so that I can now look a little bit further down in the deck from where I was. So now when I glimpse, there might be some overlap of cards that I've already glimpsed, but now I'm looking deeper into the cards I haven't glimpsed. This is where it changes. Rather than cut some from the top, what I have found is that it is far more efficient to cut a small packet from the bottom to the top. In fact, I found that 9 times out of 10, I will probably hit an ace just by doing this. So I take a small packet, not even a quarter of the deck, just a small packet, and I bring it to the top. Now what I'm doing is I'm taking the cards that are furthest out of view, that were at the bottom of the packets, the left and the right, and I'm now putting them at the top. But what this also does is by adding the bottommost cards from the deck to the top, it pushes where my break originally was at the middle. It pushes the bottommost cards from the top section into the topmost cards of the bottom section. By doing this small displacement going the other direction from bottom to top, I actually get a better look at the cards that were furthest from my view. This is the nuanced difference. I found this to be much more efficient. So now I've cut those cards to the top. Now I start over. Top, cut in the middle, top goes to the right, bottom goes to the left, and then I riffle, and I'm looking, I'm really paying attention to those topmost cards because these are cards that I know I have not seen. I did not see one there, so I switch sides, and then I do it again, and I did, sure enough, I see an ace, so I cut it to the top, and then I do this again. Once again, it is the second card, was the second, so I had to do one more zero to get to it. That's the third card, so I'm going to do one more round of this. One thing, too, I found is that by doing it this way, by jogging the right chunk forward, it brings this a little bit further back and less out of the forefront, which means it seems less important as I'm riffling and looking at it. It just seems masked because they're looking at things in front of that part. Okay, from their point of view. There's a whole half of the deck is kind of sitting in front of that corner, right? I did not see it in both of those. So what I'm going to do is the same thing again. I'm going to take a small packet from the bottom, bring it to the top, and then I'm going to go back around again. And I don't see anything there. So now I'm headed into a zombie apocalypse territory, right? But again, because this is such a quick kind of procedure, I can actually get a long way by cycling through twice and then moving some cards up. Now, in the download, I talk about this situation where you just don't seem to see anything and some solutions for that. One solution is to turn the cards over and just do it with the cards face up. And again, you're glimpsing on this side still. You're just doing the same thing. But by doing this, you actually get a very different perspective on the cards. I don't want to do that right now. I'm just going to continue on. So I'm going to go through. Again, I'm looking just for a glimpse of an A to go by. And each time I do this, I might want to try to just glimpse deeper into the packet, right, as I'm going, just in the off chance that I do hit it. And here I did hit it, okay? So that's you know, true, honest to goodness ace cutting from a truly impromptu situation. Now, how can you improve this a little bit? Well, you can improve it a little bit by giving some feasibility to it. What I mean by that is you acknowledge that you can't just merely find things you can't see. You have to have, you're really truly demonstrating a skill. The thing about this is that it really is a skill. The illusion is not actually in the thing you're doing. The thing you're doing is not an illusion at all. The illusion is actually in the procedure that you're going through, has layers of illusion that help to facilitate the actuality of finding the cards truly in a shuffled deck. Now, you can just be done with all of that and say, I can't find things I can't see. So you shuffled the deck. Let me take a quick moment to kind of memorize where things are at. Now, what I'm doing here is I'm noting at least the first plan of attack. I see that I have an ace at the very top here. I have another one that's in the same packet that's just a little bit further down. And then I've got one that's about halfway over here, or in the bottom quarter over here, and one that's about halfway over here. Okay, so I know in this case that if I cut just a little shy of half, I will probably hit the ace that's on this side almost halfway. And I also know that I have an ace that's close to the bottom of this packet and close to the top, relatively. Okay, so I kind of have at least in a little bit of insight into where the aces are at the start. So I'm going to go for the one that I know is over here near the top. And as I go, I see that I do have it indeed, and then I can cut it out. Now, because I just shuffled this right-hand packet into the very top of this packet, I know that I have aces, 2 aces in this packet. One relatively near the top, one relatively near the bottom. So I'm just going to cut this to the left as normal, but knowing that the aces are in there. You have to have kind of spatial reasoning to do this. So I'm going to riffle, knowing that I'm going to hit some aces, and I actually didn't see it, so they must be a little bit deeper. I'm going to come back, and what I'm going to do is that in this case, because I have a knowledge of it, I'm actually going to cut a small packet from the top to get a little bit deeper. Now I'm going to cut the top back to the left again, and I'm going to go back in, and there I do see it. And I don't know if my 0 held up there. I might have actually cut it out. Nope, got it. There's the second one. Now I know that there should be one a little bit further down in this packet, because I'm kind of tracking. I'm literally shuffle tracking is what I'm doing. I'm keeping track of where things are at. And because I'm doing 0 shuffles, I'm not actually mixing up the order. The only time the order gets mixed is if I have to zero deeply into one of the packets. Once I do that, I do change everything, but I haven't had to do that yet. So I'm going to cut the bottom to the left. Take a good look. I don't see anything there. And now I'm kind of left. I did catch one that time. Now I'm sort of left in a position where I am finding the last couple. Okay, so here's the last one. And I really don't know where the last one is at because I've had to negotiate the others. But I did get to those other ones a lot more quickly without having to search too hard. And here we get to the last one. There it is. Okay, so by spreading, you actually give yourself a pretty good leg up to find them a little bit more quickly. So that's one suggestion. Another quick thing about dead cutting. One thing that I've found with this is that dead cutting is something you say. It's not really something you do. When we say dead cutting, magicians understand this as having your hand off the deck, having the deck on the table, reaching out, and then cutting into the deck at a random spot, and then finding a card. That is not necessarily what it means, though. Dead cutting really just means cutting at a random spot into the deck from the table. With that in mind, I don't necessarily have to have hands off. I can have the implication of having hands off, but to a general spectator, a real spectator, the 99.999% of people that you're ever performing for, demonstrating for, they don't understand the concept of holding a break. It really doesn't matter. You don't need to necessarily have a means by which you dead cut by the magician's sort of code of dead cutting by having hand off, reaching out, and then cutting in. What you can do is merely just transfer the break. So if I'm, in this case, going through and I'm looking for my ace that I'm going to cut out, what I can do from this position is I have my break over the ace. I can just square like that. Okay, I'm actually holding the brake with this hand, but I can square like that and then reach out and transition and then say, in fact, I'll dead cut into the deck and then lift at the brake and then show it. It's the linguistics of saying that I am dead cutting into the deck that actually make dead cutting what it is. You don't have to have your hand off necessarily, and the illusion is improved merely just by transferring the brake. So you can say, in fact, what I'll do here, as I square, in fact, what I'll do here is I can even dead cut into the deck. I've transferred the brake, I find it. This is very useful for plastic cards that don't hold crimps very well. If I'm using paper, I can do crimps, but with plastic cards, it's a little harder to throw a bridge into them, but not impossible. Let me show you something here, and we'll see. This doesn't always work out. This is not terribly reliable, but we'll give it a shot here. So we're looking for our ace. Now what you would need to do first is you need to actually have it on the top at some point so that you can lay the work in. And once you have the work in, you should be able to get to it. Now the work is different. The work is different. A normal bridge, I would have the ace at the top. I've controlled it to the top in my shuffling and cutting. And then what I would do is I would reach down and I would just bend the top half of the deck up like this, and paper cards would hold that. Plastic doesn't do that very well. However, plastic cards do hold form if there's fewer cards involved and the bend is more stark. So in this case, what I can do is just grab just the top card or just few cards and give a really, really good bend, at least on one side. So the bend I'm putting into this is pretty significant. I'm not creasing it, but I'm really giving it the business here. I put a bend in on just a few cards on the top, and so long as I cut a couple packets at a time lightly, it doesn't flatten that out, and so long as I get back to it quickly. Okay, if I let it sit there too long, the plastic does have better memory than paper, and it will flatten out and it will suction. But if I kind of, in a feathered manner, and this may be too long here, but in kind of a feathered manner, drop a few packets on, and I know it's about halfway, reach out, pick up, and drop at the break that's made naturally, I should be able to get back to that card. So I have found that crimping plastic cards is doable. These are plastic bicycle prestige cards. Copag's very similar. And any other plastic card, I do find that you can crimp them. The one thing you want to be careful about when crimping plastic cards is that as you're experimenting to find where that level is at in terms of how heavy the work has to be, you don't want to crease the card, because you can ruin a plastic card pretty quickly by creasing it. And it's be very hard to get that bend back out again. Not only that, but you can create kind of a stress to the plastic that will be evident in the card permanently. You don't want to do that. So whenever crimping plastic cards, the work does have to be more firm, much stronger, and you will have to experiment until you find where you can do this with consistency. And then also be careful that you don't crease them. But it can be done. You can crimp plastic cards. I find corner crimps are a lot better with plastic cards. Putting a corner crimp on when I need someone else to shuffle the deck, that corner crimp will stick pretty well. And then also breather crimps that are more permanent in nature, I think work really great with plastic cards. That's how I index my memorized or stacked decks. I usually do with breathers on plastic cards. So anyway, a lot of stuff to cover there on actual ace cutting, or really cutting any card. You know, again, this is useful for the acquisition. I don't know if this is going to be terribly useful, but I'll take a risk on it. And if I just name like the 5 of clubs, truly random, I don't know where it's at, okay? But that's been named at some point, and through the process of shuffling the cards, I am trying to gain access to that card. Okay, again, this is harder because I really have to get through and glimpse everything, and I'm trying to glimpse it relatively quickly. Now, here's an out. Let's say I don't hit the 5 of clubs. But I say, now, you said a moment ago the 5 of clubs, right? So it'd be pretty impressive if I could find just randomly the mate to your card, the 5 of spades. When someone names a card in doing this, you don't necessarily have to get their card. You've got 3 other cards you can work with, and you can call anything the mate, right? People don't necessarily understand that the mate of a card is the same color. If I had a 5 of hearts called and I found the 5 of spades, I can call this the mate pretty legitimately, and nobody's the wiser to it unless someone understands that vernacular. That's one thing. So you can use this technique really to gain access on cards of interest, not necessarily in a dead cutting sort of situation. You can get back to cards that have been named, or especially if something was named early and other things are happening, you can use the procedure of false shuffling to gain access to it. Still having the cards facing down and not having to do a face-up cull of some kind. So anyway, just a few ideas on that use as well. Anyway, good luck with that, and happy magicking.